Hello everyone, this lecture is on postmodernism and ethics. So we're continuing our series today. Postmodernism is a broad movement in the late 20th century philosophy marked in general terms by openness in meaning and authority, and a willingness to borrow from previous movements and traditions. It is often defined negatively as a reaction and opposition to modernity. Some people assert that it signifies a new paradigm of intellectual thought. Some see postmodernism as just another phase of modernity, and some see it as a complete replacement for and backlash against modernity. The growing anti-establishment movement of the 1960s can be considered the founding event of postmodernism. With the current wide availability of the internet, mobile phones, interactive TV, and things like that, and the instantaneous, direct, and shallow, and often superficial participation in culture that they allow, some critics have even theorized that we're now entering into a postmodern phase. In philosophy, specifically, postmodernism is generally viewed as an openness to meaning and authority, so that the ultimate source of authority is the actual event of the discourse itself, that is, the continuing conversation about a question rather than seeking an answer. Because of its relative, non-stationary approach to things, it is able to pick ideas from a wide range of speculative points of view. So postmodernism is also a broad and non-specific movement. Postmodernists often have to defend themselves against criticism of philosophical incompetence and contradiction. One method that postmodern uses to defend itself against this claim is by taking a wider view of what words mean. Words lose their meanings, but in order to communicate with others, academic words are necessary. Therefore, to accuse a postmodernist of inconsistency, according to postmodern defenders, means that the critic doesn't understand postmodernism. So the meta-narrative, the big story of life, the universe, and ethics rests on this wide range of speculative viewpoints that simply can be described as relative. Relativism, that is that technical term, is the belief that there is no absolute truth, only truths that are particular to individuals or cultures that they happen to believe. If a person believes in this type of relativism, then he or she can have varying and contradictory ideas about what is moral or immoral. This, of course, connects directly with postmodernism because the person's discussion of the event is the key to understanding rather than identifying if something is either right or wrong. Ethical relativism holds the same idea in that morality is fluid and based on culture and personal preference. At this point in our lectures, you should be able to identify a number of problems with postmodernism and relativism as it relates to ethics, that is, the morality of an action. Of course, many people argue for moral relativism. They argue that there is no objective moral values which help us determine what is right and wrong. They claim everything is relative. And in order to defend this position, the relative puts forth two arguments. One, since people and cultures disagree about morality, there are no objective moral values. Two, moral relativism leads to tolerance of practices we may find different or odd. Now, these two arguments are seriously flawed. In addition, the moral relativist has a difficult time explaining moral progress, moral reformation, and clear-cut cases of moral saints and moral devils. Quickly, I'd like to comment on the two claims of relativism. The first, that cultures disagree so that there are no objective moral values, fails the test of application. That is, you can't live it. All cultures identify some actions as right or wrong. This is not to say that the cultural way of expressing things in a sociological sense needs to show agreement, such as clothing. Rather, we're not talking about clothing. We're talking about cultures and their values. So every culture has values that identify as actions as actions that are either virtuous or evil. As soon as they identify an action as noteworthy, we wind up then seeing a moral statement. It's not all relative. You can't hold to contradictory ideas. A box cannot be square and a circle at the same time. That violates something called the law of non-contradictions. All right, every culture states that there are actions that are evil or virtuous. Any deficiency of this idea that ethics is purely subjective cannot be sustained in practice. And a simple statement as offensive as this will prove the point. If someone says, I personally oppose slavery, but I would never force my opinion on someone who supports slavery, that statement reveals the absurdity of postmodernism, relativism, and that moral position that there is no objective truth. Since if there are no moral values, then no one could impose their objection or opposition to slavery on anyone else. But by saying that slavery is wrong, we immediately identify an absolute moral statement, not a subjective or relative moral statement. The other problem with ethical relativism is seen in the statement that it leads to tolerance of practice. It doesn't take more than a moment of surveying the current political and social landscape to see that tolerance is a one-way street in the West. Western culture demands conformity, not discussion about controversial issues. In fact, discussion is the last thing that is desired. Whether the question is about personal morality, politics, or hair color, there is an incredible push to agree with current popular trends. In fact, a number of American politicians have voiced their demand that Christianity must change its stand on morality for the good of society. So much for tolerance in a postmodern world. We all see many educational institutions creating safe zones so that students do not have to be oppressed by the opinions with which they may disagree with, or more accurately, what popular culture may disagree with. As is seen in the prior illustrations, postmodernism and relativism that directs its morality is unable to provide a foundation for truth, which should not surprise anyone. Postmodernism is unlivable because its view of truth is based on subjective experience and opinion. Finally, postmodernism acknowledges a lack of moral foundation and embraces the unknown. But one does not need to pretend that truth exists or that there is no purpose in life and just simply fake it. As stated in other lectures, there are overarching moral foundational principles found in the Bible and in Christian tradition that provide a basis for decision making, even decision making in our postmodern culture. The challenge for us is to understand that moral absolutes in Scripture, what moral absolutes in Scripture are, and what those things are that are simply cultural preferences. To discern between the two takes wisdom, an understanding of the Bible, what was going on in the world of the Bible, and a knowledge of what it says and what it doesn't say. When it comes to making an ethical choice, it is not the discussion that is the key, but the choice itself and what we are grounding that choice in. I'm afraid that many Christians don't know enough about the Bible to make wise decisions. They are too busy embracing postmodernism themselves, and that may be a reason why many Christians are confused about ethical decision making in our postmodern culture. Thank you for listening to our lecture. Until the next time, this is Dr. Brent Kelly.